Oh, hi, hello. The title of my proposed applied project is Acceptance and Commitment Training using Behavior Analytic Technologies and Teaching Foundational Skills of Psychological Flexibility. A note up front, there are going to be code words and ASRs in my presentation. You do not have to do everything. You can pick to do just the ASRs or just the code words. Of course, if you really want to, you can do it all. I wanted to put some embedded choice in here for you guys. For the ASR, there are going to be no right or wrong answers, just your opinions based on your experience. And the code words, I've tried to make them as eye-catching as possible, and I'll even say them out loud. Let's get into it. I'll begin with a brief intro to the key elements of my proposal: emotional disturbance, acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, and discrete trial training. The first code word is U. Emotional disturbance. It's a disability recognized by IDEA and the Department of Education. It is a qualifying disability for special education. The prevalence of emotional disturbance diagnosis for learners receiving special education services in Vermont is about 3 times the national average. Emotional disturbance we already covered. Moving on to ASR 1. Remember, for these ASR, there are no right or wrong answers. They're just asking your experience and your opinions. So, for ASR 1, have you worked with students who were diagnosed with emotional disturbance? If yes, what intervention strategies were applied to help those students? And do you think that they were effective? If not, what intervention strategies do you think would be effective to help those students? ACT is a growing body of empirical research demonstrating amelioration effects for emotion-related distress. Therefore, it may be a good fit for children and adolescents with emotional disturbance. ACT is derived from modern psychology and behavior analysis through relational frame theory. It's an intervention approach focusing on increasing psychological flexibility as a set of skills. Those skills are very similar to the ones found in mindfulness practices, which has its own body of empirical support and has been widely accepted by mainstream psychology. In this illustration, we see the 6 processes within psychological flexibility model. The overall target for behavior to increase is psychological flexibility, achieved by increases in some or all of these components. The underlying foundational skill in all of this is noticing, which can be further broken down into identifying and discriminating. These are challenging areas for the 10 students that I work with in the area of private events. The problem lies in the fact that before you can identify or discriminate anything, you must first have a sufficient verbal repertoire in the given area and be introduced to the discrete characteristics of the various elements. So, with this, I propose that the acquisition of an emotional vocabulary is a premier prerequisite of psychological flexibility model of ACT, and that the identification and discrimination of emotions and other private events are the foundational skills and moderators of psychological flexibility within this model. Here comes ASR 2. In your opinion, what do you think about teaching verbal repertoires for identifying and discriminating private events? Does it have a place in ABA? Why or why not? Discrete trial training is a well-established behavior analytic technology. It's widely used for teaching skills including vocabulary acquisition, and there's a very large amount of supporting evidence for that. DTT is also a well-established method for discrimination training through training receptive and expressive identifications. For this proposal and my research, I took a particularly close look into the work of Lovaas and Sundberg. Therefore, I conclude that DTT would be a good match to teach the identification and discrimination of private events. More specifically, the acquisition of emotional vocabulary words, enhanced with discrimination training of that new lexicon. What it all boils down to are these two questions. Will traditional discrete trial training be effective and efficient at teaching foundational skills of psychological flexibility? And possibly more importantly, will it lead to an increase in an individual's perceptions and ratings of their psychological flexibility and happiness? This question is also the major concern of social validity. As a bigger picture, the study will also seek to reveal possible moderators of psychological flexibility. There will be 5 dependent variables of interest, or 4 rather: efficacy, social validity,